We have got to address what is the problem there. It is not that there is root causes in Central America. We're the United States of America. Everyone in the world wants to be here. And if all you have to do is cross the border and say the magic words, I have credible fear, and the Biden administration hands you a piece of paper, and you're in the country for the next 8 years, until you're hearing, the whole world's going to keep coming here. Now, right now, literally right now, we have 8,000 people a day that are illegally crossing our border. 8,000. Last summer, in the midst of all the chaos, when all the cameras were focused on our southern border, there were 6,000 people a day that were illegally crossing our border. It is literally worse now than it was a year ago, but the cameras have all moved on and said nothing to see here when it continues to be able to get worse, literally every month. Last month, 250,000 people illegally crossed the border. 250,000. Half of those turned away with Title 42 authority, which the Biden administration is trying to end to allow everyone to be able to come across the border. But this asylum rule gives me some sense of hope that they're at least identifying what the problem is and trying to start working on it. Here's the problem, though. The way that this rule is actually set up, almost every negative determination made under this expedited asylum process gets appealed under the normal process anyway. So while they're creating an expedited process, all they have to do is say, I disagree with the expedited process, and they get through the long, protracted 8-year process anyway. It doesn't solve the problem. So while the executive branch is trying to do something, there's something that they're doing doesn't actually fix the issue. We have to change this issue in law. Secretary Mayorkas was on the Hill 2 weeks ago. He came and presented the new plan in place for what they're going to do on the border. Part of that plan was this new asylum rule. But when you read the summary at the very end of it, they go through all their details, these high-level points of 6 different areas where they're going to work to be able to decrease. At the end of it, the summary statement ends with, despite our best efforts, we anticipate an increase in migration. What they're saying is the policies that they currently have in place are going to continue to increase migration, even with things like this new asylum rule that they're trying to be able to put in place, because they know this doesn't actually fix the problem. MPP, the Remain in Mexico program that a federal court has required them to maintain, that they're doing MPP only in such a way to say to the federal courts, we're doing something. We have 8,000 people a day that are illegally crossing the border. We have about 2,000 people a month that they're putting through the MPP program. We have 8,000 people a day that are illegally crossing the border. Currently, ICE is deporting 203 people a day. With 8,000 people a day crossing, 203 people actually being deported, you see the math here. They're not trying to stop the flow. They're not trying to disincentivize this. We need to actually get serious about this. So yes, I'm going to support a Congressional Review Act on this individual piece because it doesn't actually fix the problem. Let's actually sit down and fix the problem actually in statute. That's what needs to be done. With that, I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Utah.
I rise to support this Congressional Review Act resolution of disapproval of the rule recently published by the Department of Homeland Security and the Executive Office for Immigration Review entitled, quote, Procedures for Credible Fear Screening and Consideration of Asylum Withholding of Removal and Cat Protection Claims by Asylum Officers, close quote. Madam President, we're currently experiencing an unprecedented crisis on our southern border. As of April of this year, 4 months into 2022, over 1 million illegal crossers had been encountered at our southern border. And with the administration fighting the migrant protection protocols.
Trump aide unleashed a series of statistics and anecdotal evidence, underscoring what they called the failures of the Biden administration. The rhetoric was charged, as the aide claimed that Biden's policies had led to an unprecedented surge in illegal crossings, overwhelming resources, and posing national security risks. the crowd responded with visceral reactions, their anger and fervor.
And moving to remove the Title 42 restrictions on entry, this crisis is about to get much, much worse. We've heard estimates of unauthorized border encounters this summer ranging close to 20,000 daily. We don't know how to handle these numbers, and nothing has been done by the administration to deter these immigrants. Despite knowing of the coming influx and despite understanding the statutory mandates, which require immigrants to be detained, this administration is closing detention centers. It appears we now have fewer than 20,000 detention beds available. This seems to suggest that DHS has no intention of detaining these immigrants, even though it's plainly required by statute. In the midst of this unprecedented crisis at our southern border, the Department of Homeland Security, under Secretary Mayorkas, has, by regulation, bypassed duly enacted laws to make the asylum process a mere rubber stamp for basically anyone who can make it to our borders. Because of the internet and the sophistication of coyotes and cartels, every alien encountered knows to express fear of returning to their home country, thus triggering the asylum process. This rule would change that adversarial process, whereby one actually has to produce some shred of evidence that they'll qualify for asylum, to a non-adversarial process, whereby the alien merely has to assert the claim. Additionally, this rule would take the asylum decisions out of the hands of immigration judges and put them into the hands of frontline screeners who often have no legal skills at all. This rule violates current immigration laws, laws passed by this body, laws enacted by Congress. It violates the separation of powers by usurping congressional authority to enact the laws of the nation. Currently, under the law, until an immigration judge has ruled on an asylum claim, the claimant is required to be detained. Under the proposed rule, there'd be no need for detention because no time will be required to rubber stamp that asylum application. It just happens. It's very interesting that this rule is about to go into effect right before this already unprecedented crisis exponentially increases. I don't think this is by accident. It's by design. This rule demonstrates that they simply want to manage the unprecedented influx of illegal immigrants into every American city, making every town a border town. America has always been a welcoming land, a land with outstretched arms, and it always should be. I'm very proud of Utahns for how well they exemplify that welcoming spirit to immigrants, including the refugees and the asylum seekers who come into our state. I'm also concerned that if we degrade the process by administrative rule, we erode our ability to give refuge and asylum in the cases where it's truly needed, in the cases where, as a representative body, we've decided it should be given. Now, in studying this rule, I was struck by the fact that it assumes asylum is a right, a legal right for anyone and everyone managing somehow to get to our border. It is not a right. Asylum is a gift that the United States can choose to bestow on those who really need it, the persecuted, when authorized by law and consistent with the terms of the law. This rule doesn't ever mention the interests of the American citizen in this process, not once. The interest that would usually be represented in the adjudicative adversarial process that occurs before a judge. The American people are left out of this process. In fact, that